Zion Youth. What's up, guys? Wanted to take a couple minutes today and dig into your reading for today with you in your booklets on 1 Peter. Today your reading starts in chapter 2, verse 13. And so let's read that together, and I'll share some thoughts that I have with you. So it says, "Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human authority, whether to the emperor as the supreme authority, or to the governors who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to commend those who do right. For it is God's will that by doing good you should silence ignorant talk of foolish people. Live as free people, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as God's slaves. Show proper respect to everyone. Love the family of believers. Fear God. Honor the emperor." So what Peter's talking about here is the witness that Christians had living in areas and cultures that were anti-Christian. They were not living in Christian governments. They were living in places that were not Christian. They were pagan. And Peter is urging them to really keep their Christian witness and represent Christ well. And so what he's saying here is, listen, submit yourselves to human authority in your life. Rebelling against authority, acting out, and causing ruckus is not gonna bring people to Jesus. It's not gonna bring a positive Christian witness to those around you. He says a little bit later here. He says, "For it is God's will that by doing good you should silence the ignorant talk of foolish people." Now, what he's talking about here is there is times that people would serve and do good for their community and for their local government in a way that was above and beyond what was expected. And when they did that, they would receive honor and thanks from the rulers. And Peter is saying, listen, go above and beyond, do good and serve your community, serve the leaders there. And so that even when people come and they bring foolish arguments against you, you're gonna be looked good upon because of the good that you've done and that you're blessing and serving your community. Now, what Peter isn't saying is, follow the government and do what the government says to the point where it causes you to sin. When there's an area of sin or an area of, do I obey God or do I obey the government? We should always obey God. God is our ultimate authority. But in places that we can both obey God and government, it's best to keep our Christian witness and to be a good representation of Christ rather than to cause a ruckus and rebel and because we're free, right? We're free people. He says, don't use our freedom as a cover-up to do evil. Use it for good as God's slaves. So I'm going to talk about the next couple verses as well to conclude this video. So let's just read starting in verse number 18. It says, "Slaves, in reverent fear of God, submit yourselves to your masters, not only to those who are good and considerate, but also to those who are harsh. For it is commendable if someone bears up under the pain of unjust suffering, because they are conscious of God. But how is it, to your credit, if you receive a beating for doing wrong and endure it? But if you suffer for doing good and you endure it, this is commendable before God. To this you are called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. He committed no sin, and no deceit was found in his mouth." So we have to remember again that Paul is writing to Christians in pagan societies, and these societies and these cultures have lots of slaves. Now, Peter is not saying slavery is good or it's right, but he realizes that this is part of the society, and he's trying to teach those that find themselves as slaves in the society that become Christians how to act. So he's writing to those who have gotten saved, and he's saying, listen, your goal, again, is your Christian witness in this situation, right? So do your best to submit to your masters. Do your best to do what they say, because what good is it if you rebel against them and you get beat for it? It's not going to do you any good. It's not going to be a good Christian witness. Now, if you're doing good and you suffer for that and you keep doing good, then God is going to commend you for that, and it's also going to be a point where you might bring your master to Jesus. And so he's talking to them as how to be a Christ follower, how to have a Christian witness in these situations that you find yourselves in the middle of pagan societies that are not following God, but how do you live in the midst of those? And so yeah, just wanted to share that with you guys, help you guys as you dissect this a little bit. And it's good for us to also think about, how do we live, right, in the middle of a culture and government that's not Christian? How do we honor and respect our government, but yet follow God more importantly, and ultimately when those things come into conflict, right? And so we should do our best to serve our communities, to bless them. It makes me think of my home church in Painesville, or in Cold Spring, Minnesota. Every Christmas, they would do a huge Christmas play, and all the proceeds that would go to that, they would use to bless the community. They would use it to bless the firemen who needed equipment, or a family that was hurting. And so they would do good in the community, kind of like what this was talking about, being a good Christian witness and following the government when they can, but when those things come into conflict, we follow God first. So hope that was encouraging for you guys. Hope that brought some understanding. Hope you guys are having a great week. We'll see you Wednesday night.